All right, we're going to get started here. My name is Bryce Young. I'm the director of marketing here at St. Joseph Academy. I'm joined with some panelists here, our Dean of Admissions, Ms. Umasella, our head of school, Mr. Stephen Capuccio, and a very special guest, Dr. Latia Pierce. We are very excited to have Dr. Pierce join us today to give us this virtual webinar on a topic that we consider very near and dear to our heart. And for all of our attendees here, we assume it's very near and dear to your heart as well. As an educational institution, having a better understanding of the stage of life our students are in will allow us to help guide them through that stage of life. And as parents, having a better understanding for this stage of life that your children are in, and some best practices, things to look at, we believe to be a very profound topic. So we're very excited to be able to offer this and have a professional in this field and an expert on adolescent development, Dr. Pierce, join us today. She's also the CEO of Brightside Wellness in Vineland, New Jersey. She's also a parent of a student here at St. Joseph Academy. So we're very excited. A little about how this webinar is going to work. I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Pierce after I'm done rambling here. But as the webinar goes along, if you have questions, there is a Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. If you're online through a desktop, it's at the bottom bar. If you're on your phone joining us, there is a tab at the bottom bar as well. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in there and we'll address them at the end after Dr. Pierce has ran through this deck. And that's really it. We're going to sit back and enjoy this great presentation that Dr. Pierce has. So I'm done rambling here. Dr. Pierce, please take it away.
All right. Well, thank you for that amazing introduction. And hello to everyone who has joined today. And for those who may listen or watch at a later date, I hope you find today's presentation helpful. So the initial topic seems very bland, adolescent development, but you'll learn more about what this presentation is about as we continue. Some of the key concepts include adolescent development. What is an adolescent? Adolescent mental health, social, media dynamics, and supportive strategies, things that you can start to implement now, things that you can start to look for now as your adolescent, continues to grow and develop. What things can you do as a parent to help support and guide them? Adolescence. It's defined as ages 11 to 21, and it's a critical period in the development of a young person's life. It's filled with distinctive and pivotal biological and cognitive, emotional, and social changes. One of the hallmarks of adolescence is the development toward autonomy and individual adult decision making. We see some challenges there, of course. It's when our little one all of a sudden thinks that they're an adult. However, adolescents are often faced with situations for which they may not be prepared. Hopefully, we can learn how to prepare them in this webinar. The unique biological and psychosocial changes occurring during adolescence. Well, there's one we all know, puberty, our favorite, right? It's the hallmark of physiologic progression from a child to an adult body. Chronic conditions can develop during this time, like obesity, so keep an eye out. And we also may see some manifestations associated with past traumas. We can see that in either early puberty, and we can see that it puts our adolescents at an increased risk for risk-taking behaviors like smoking or alcohol use or high-risk sexual activity. Delayed puberty, however, is often a variant of normal development, but it can be seen in adolescents with other conditions like inflammatory bowel disease, eating disorders, and other chronic conditions. If you notice any eating disorders, we want to think malnutrition. And so please address that with your pediatrician, but you can also speak with members of SJA. Those resources will be at the end of the slide. Oops, sorry, I'm going to go back. Outside of puberty, we have brain development. The brain, right? So, brain development during adolescence is ongoing and affects behavior and health. I'm sure we've all seen some of those changes. We start to see a reward system in which the brain motivates behavior and the continuing maturation of parts of the brain that regulate impulse control. Adolescents may have the propensity to be involved with high risk behaviors and a heightened response to emotionally loaded situations. Some parents may say, "You're overreacting." If you said that before, this is what's happening in the adolescent's brain. During adolescence, there's a pruning of gray matter and synapses, all kinds of technical terms, but for people that like science, there you go. And it makes the brain more efficient. And so while you're experiencing those challenging behaviors, know that the brain is developing itself to be more efficient for what comes with adulthood. White matter is also increasing throughout adolescence, which allows the older adolescent and the adult brain to conduct more complex cognitive tasks and adaptive behaviors. And studies so show that if our adolescent is drinking alcohol and even using marijuana, their body responds differently than adult bodies. So we want to try to avoid those things because there are some cognitive effects of alcohol use and marijuana use that are different in adolescents than what we see in adults. And then for our adolescents, they're going through a space of sexual orientation and gender identification. I understand this is a hot topic, especially during times of politics. However, sexual development for adolescents is normal. It's a part of the process. In early childhood, it involves in negotiating and experimenting with identity, relationships, and roles. In early adolescence, people begin to recognize or become aware of their sexual orientation. Some adolescents are still unsure if there are sexual attractions, and others of their own sexual attractions, and others struggle with their known sexual attraction. Adolescence is a time of identity formation and experimentation. So, labels that one uses for their sexual orientation often do not correlate with the actual sexual behaviors and partners. So, for more information on that, please see the reference pages as there is a lot in sexual orientation and gender identification for the adolescent group that continue on throughout the adult period. Our developmental theorists, and so the old experts say, and still, agreed upon with the new experts, is our adolescents are in a stage of industry versus inferiority and identity versus role confusion. So, like understanding one's sexual orientation and sexual what? Identity, right? And so this isn't just about sexual health. This is even among peer groups. Am I the leader or the follower? Am I trending? Is that the new term for social media use? And then we have our other theorists, right? This is where we're forming concrete operational thought patterns where the child can think logically about concrete objects and add the context and subject, and formal operational, where now we can reason more abstractly and think in hypothetical terms. What does this mean? Well, it means that mental health and emotional well being are important. That's what it means. Adolescence is a crucial period for developing social and emotional habits, important for mental well being. These include adapting healthy sleep patterns, exercising regularly, developing coping. I'll say that again, developing coping, problem solving, interpersonal skills. We want to learn to manage our emotions, which again goes with developing coping. And we want to have a protective and supportive environments in family, at school, and in the wider community. These things are important. Mental health and emotional well being, in combination with issues pertaining to sexual and reproductive health, violence and unintentional injury, substance use, eating disorders, and obesity, create potential challenges to adolescents, healthy emotional and physical development. So we want that supportive social circle. What mental health conditions are most common for teens, right? You learned that it's important, but what are we facing here? We're facing some of the same things we see adults face. ADHD, this affects nearly 10% of all kids ages 3 to 17. Anxiety interferes with everyday functioning of our adolescents, even during things like test taking or talking, with a peer. Depression. 4.5% live with depression. And in teens, depression may not look like the stereotyped tearful blues that we could see in adults. Symptoms of depression could look more like anger, irritability, or some people may just say moodiness. Even though it's less common, we can still see eating disorders and we can see self harm. And most of the time, these things are underreported and continue on through adulthood. I have to mention that September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And in understanding mental health, we need to know some of the statistics. So, according to the World Health Organization, globally, 1 in 7, it's 14%, children ages 10 to 19 years old experience a mental disorder, accounting for 13% of the global burden of disease. And globally, suicide is the fourth leading cause of death among children and adults ages 15 to 29 years old. In the United States, suicide is the second leading cause of death in adolescents ages 11 to 21. The second leading cause of death. In 2016, we had nearly 5,700 adolescent deaths associated with suicide. So the consequences of failing to address adolescent mental health conditions extend to adulthood, impairing both physical and mental health and limiting opportunities to lead successful, fulfilling lives. These things don't always go away. Many young people are dealing with pressures, right? Even though us adults are still dealing with pressures, our teens have pressures too. They have that overwhelming pressure to figure out their future. Get good grades, we tell them. You got to gain admission to that college, we tell them. Or if their grades aren't always there, you need to be the sports superstar, we tell them. It'll help with your admission here. It'll get you that scholarship or whatever other extracurricular activity they're doing, whether it's performing in the school play or throwing the football. They have tough schedules that don't allow enough time for self care, like rest, relaxation, and unstructured fun. When's the last time you just get to see them playing, not on the video game, but just playing for the sake of playing outdoors? They experience bullying and now cyberbullying, which is more common than ever. They have persistent fears about climate change and global conflict and weight issues. Remember, these adolescents now are thinking more abstract, hypothetical. So things that usually could roll over them is not doing that as often as it would have in early childhood. And then there's still discrimination based on race, gender, sexual orientation, weight, religion, disability, and other factors. And there's poverty. Social economics still play a role. So lack of money for safe, stable housing and enough nutritious food also is a pressure that teens can face. Got to touch on social media. And so some people say that this is the cause. This is why my adolescent is experiencing these things. Too much screen time, we say. But there's some positive aspects of social media, like the social connection. One of the ways kids use social media is for connection. They share photos and comments on these different social media platforms. It allows them to keep in touch with peers and family who live far away. And they can also join groups that represent their aspects and their identities or interests. Even if these groups aren't available at school, guess what? They can join it via Facebook and now share common interests with others. They can learn from social media. Anyone ever heard? I learned it from TikTok. I have way too much. Don't believe everything you learn on TikTok. Just a disclaimer. But still, you can learn from social media, and adolescents use this as a learning experience. Even if you learn that what you saw was not real, you learned something, right? So even in times where the information is not all we want it to be, they're getting something from it. But be cautious because there's also overload. Using social media too much, though, can push out other important activities like being in person with friends, or being in person with family, or even being connected at the dinner table instead of everyone being on their phone. There's also unhealthy content, of course, and we can expose adolescents to content that is violent through social media, dangerous, and inaccurate. And so we can also even see these idealized images that can lead to poor body image in some of our adolescents. So we want to be aware of the unhealthy content. So what are you saying, Dr. Chris? Are you saying that social media is killing my child? I knew it. I'm taking the phone later. No, wait. Can social media lead to depression? Does it do it? Well, studies haven't really figured it out yet, guys. Some studies have found that young people who use more social media were more likely to report depression symptoms. But considering those studies, we couldn't tell if more social media use was impacting depression or whether participants already had depression, which was affecting the amount of time they spent using social media. Other research studies showed that there's no relationship between the amount of social media use and depression symptoms. However, if you'd like to learn more about these studies, you can take a second to scan this QR code because in 2020, a review article summarized all of the studies over the past 5 years on social media and depression, and you'll have access to that information with the QR code on this slide. So, how do I know when my team needs help? I have a team. Well, I look and see if they are often on edge or wound up most of the time. If they're worrying about things for no reason or having negative thoughts that are hard to control, if they're feeling panicky or having physical symptoms like headaches, stomach aches, pain, rapid breathing, fast heartbeat, diarrhea, and it doesn't have to be one, it can be all of them during various times. It's always ill. Avoiding activities because of fear or anxiety, changes in sleep habits like trouble sleeping or tired during the day, being quick to give up on a challenging task, struggling with schoolwork, spending more time alone, feeling sad or irritable, feeling guilty about things, and talking about death or suicide. These are things that are should foster a conversation between you and your child. How do we do that? Well, it's a good thing you asked. Here's a slide on how to learn how to communicate. So typically, we want to just communicate the way we always do, but it doesn't work as well with this group. So what do you say and when do you say it? Well, when you realize there's some symptoms going on, and you start by turning off the parent alarm. That means listening without judgment and reaction. When your son says, Mom, I met this girl, and you act by saying, You're too young to date, that's instinctual. And that alarm prevented you from to hold a meaningful conversation and discussion about healthy sexuality, right? We don't want to catastrophize. When teens come to their parents with concerns, they need a calming, rational appearance, one that will create a safe space for them to figure things out. When parents make it seem worse than what they had imagined, the child can leave more anxious and may not return. And we don't want to over empathize. Adolescents need a sounding board. Sometimes they exaggerate, sometimes they express fleeting feelings. And when you over empathize, it can heighten their emotions and make you look more naive or overly involved. Imagine you're empathizing by condemning their friend who your daughter had a fight with, right? This happens. And you'll look wrong the next day when your daughter is now best friends again with the same classmate that they hated yesterday. But no, parents, that your values and opinions, they matter. Teens are happy to hear their parents' values and opinions, but these opinions should not be shared in a way that causes them to feel judged. We shouldn't do this in a condescending manner. It is helpful to try to avoid personal territory that will position your teen to need to become defensive of their friends or their self. We want to avoid lecturing, right? And we want to know that young adolescents are still not haven't completed the abstract thinking. And so and all teens who are upset or in crisis mode may not absorb the lesson delivered the way that you're trying to deliver them, especially at the time of crisis. Other ways to communicate? Well, we want to make it safe for your teen to discuss tough issues. Kids often avoid talking about touchy subjects, but we want to affirm with them that they can tell us anything. We want to make sure that the conversations take place in a judgment-free zone. We can call it a safe space, right? And we want to emphasize and explain to our teen that we are looking to understand what they are going through And we're going to do that by providing a loving, supportive environment. We just want to support you, we say. We want to resolve to listen more than we speak. I know I'm speaking a lot because I'm the host. Don't speak as much, listen more, because nothing will send your teen running faster in the other direction than thinking that you're not hearing them fully, right? And so you'll need to manage your own fears during the conversation so we can avoid autobiographical listening. That happens when you filter everything through your own life lens instead of listening for deep understanding in the message that your adolescent is trying to convey. We want to consider ways to avoid putting your teen on the defensive. We talked about that, right? We should use fair, factual statements, but not ones that will create defense, like saying, instead of saying you're acting really strange over the past few days, you can use an example instead of saying, I noticed you hate coming down for dinner lately, and you don't seem hungry at other times. I wondered if there's something in your life making it hard for you to enjoy the stuff you usually love, like my killer oatmeal cookies, right? Even though it's a little bit more wordy, that's okay. It avoids creating a space where they feel like they need to defend whatever it is that they're doing. And they might not respond to it. But that brings us to a next point, accepting some silence. Your child may not know what to say at first, especially if they've been trying to hide the way they're feeling. Often these children feel shame and fear on top of everything else. We can explain that you're worried, but you can wait for them to think about how they would like to talk to you. And if they don't come back to you in a couple of days, try restarting the conversation again. We need to realize that mental health stigma still exists. Despite much progress, some people still believe that having mental health condition means that you're broken, untrustworthy, or potentially violent, or that others may think that of you. And in fact, many people still to this day don't seek mental health treatment because they're afraid of what others will think of them. If you'd like to know more about the stigma associated with mental health, please scan the QR code on the slide. And this will go over the breakdown of how stigma is still impacting mental health and reported mental health symptoms to date. Now, how do we talk with not just our child, but introduce this conversation to a healthcare provider, teen, or their pediatrician? As a parent, you can bring up the concerns during the wellness visit. A lot of times, pediatricians will screen for common mental health conditions during their visit without the parents present. If, however, the pediatrician doesn't mention it and there are things that you have noticed, definitely bring it up, but not without considering your child first. It's a good idea to talk to your child ahead of time. Consider starting the conversation by assuring, I care about you and I want to make sure I understand how you're feeling. And your doctor is someone who can help. That creates, again, that safe, supportive environment. We've talked a lot during this presentation. What do I want to take home outside of everything else I said? Well, I want you to remember that mental health is a key part of human health, right? Parents and teens do not need to feel ashamed or fearful in seeking treatment. It's no different from getting care for a broken bone or a serious infection or any other major health concern. Mental health is important. Try not to blame yourself for your child's struggles. Life is hard, and kids are doing the best they can to manage the pressures they face, just as you are too. Show compassion for yourself and your child as you move forward. And even if you have a history of mental health issues yourself, you are not the root cause of your child's difficulties. Showing love, trust, and respect for yourself and your teen is the healthiest way to ensure you both find the resources you need. Approximately 20% of adolescents have a diagnosable mental health disorder. Many mental health disorders present initially during adolescence, and 25% of adults with mood disorder had their first major depressive episode during adolescence. So now is not a time to wait until they grow out of it. If you recognize some symptoms, it is time to act. How do we do that? Well, we know this slide. Everyone could take a second and take a photo. These are our mental health crisis resources in the state of New Jersey. You know someone who needs support now? Text 988 or visit the 988 Lifeline chat and text. You can connect with a trained crisis counselor, okay? In other emergencies, of course, dial 911. And additional resources for addiction, mental health support. We have the New Jersey Helpline. We have Reach NJ. We have NJ Connect, National Suicide Hotline. This is a slide to keep in your phone, even if not for yourself, but to send to someone else whose child or adult may be experiencing a crisis. There's also us. So, as so eloquently put, I am the CEO of Brightside Wellness. Our office is located in Vineland, New Jersey. The address is there. Email for the company is there, along with phone number, website, and the QR code. If you scan that, will take you directly to our site. We have 3 providers with this group, and we see adults and children for various mental health conditions. Of course, St. Joseph Academy has resources too, which are linked on the listed on the other part of the site, along with their QR code for their website's mental health resources. So please take a picture of this slide or scan those codes for additional resources. References are here. I believe this is recorded, so you may be able to go back and reference them at the time if there was anything that interests you and you wanted to go back. This can take you directly to some of the websites that where information was gathered for today's presentation. Any questions?
Awesome, Dr. Pierce. We did have a couple questions that came through. Is there a best way to limit your child's social media use?
First, understanding how much time on the device is used with social media and or gaming activities. iPhones and Androids alike have portions where you can see what screen time is used for what. I wouldn't want to confuse social media with binge watching Netflix. And sometimes our kid is not on TikTok, they're binge watching Netflix. And so if we take the device, then we can inhibit them from doing an activity that they actually enjoy. So I would take the opportunity to first explore what they're engaging in. And then if you see that majority of the time is spent on social media, depending on the age group of that child, we can start to develop healthy parameters. Again, using those devices, you can set an hour a day for different apps in their phone. And so I would consider the device, consider the usage, and have a conversation before enforcing anything. See where they are and how they respond.
Another question, is one social media platform worse than the other? And they gave a couple examples, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube.
Whew. Yeah. Hopefully none of those people are watching that are in charge of these things, but honestly, no. A lot of times TikTok, because I banned TikTok and it was a failed attempt because all the TikTok videos were posted on YouTube. So, well, much for that. You know, how to learn that dance, they saw it on YouTube. And so, no. And while we wait for the government to try to make it safer, they honestly have access to the same information across any platform, and misinformation is also, widely spread across all of the platforms you mentioned and more. So I wouldn't say one is better than the other.
Right. And the last question we have on here, when's a good time to start a conversation with your child that is not showing emotional distress?
If they're not showing it and you're one who doesn't always talk to your child, then you can just start it by those regular questions. How's your day? What's been going on? If they're not showing distress, but you notice that their peer group might have changed, inquire more about their friends. Understanding even who your child is associated with can help you understand what's being poured in to your child. And so if they don't have any peer groups, but they're on social media and they have social media groups, now inquire about that. See if some of the social dynamics can help you understand what your child may have going on and allow that to create and build improved communication skills where now you're taking an interest in what they're doing outside of the how was your day? Good. We want to expand beyond that. And that's a healthy way to do it.
Right. That is all the questions that we had. Dr. Pierce, thank you so much for your time today. And thank you for everyone who was able to join us today. This was recorded. We will be sending out the link to anyone that registered. But again, thank you for your time, Dr. Pierce, and thank you for everyone who was able to join. Mr. Capuccio, Gina, Dr. Pierce, any last words?
No, I just want to thank Dr. Pierce. I feel like, as a parent myself and kind of navigating these teenage years, sometimes you're speechless. You can figure it out for everybody else's kid but your own. So um, we're blessed to have such a wealth of knowledge and resource to be a part of our community. So thank you so much, Dr. Pierce.
Thank you for having me. And my oldest is 16. We got three more behind him. So I'll be referencing this slide again, I'm sure. And if any of you need it or need anything else, please don't hesitate to ask.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. Thank you everyone for joining. Have a great rest of your day. And this link to the presentation recording will be out by the end of the day. Thanks, everyone. Take care.